You think medieval torture was bad? Picture this, being sewn into a heavy leather sack, stuffed with a snake, a monkey, a dog, a rooster, then plunged alive into a river. It wasn't fiction. This was Roman justice, poena culae, the ultimate punishment for parricide, the sack of death. Today, we dive deep into this ritual of terror, where Rome chose spectacle over mercy, and discover why this punishment haunted the ancient world for over 600 years. In ancient Rome, no crime was more abhorrent than parricide, the murder of a parent, usually the father. But Romans saw it not just as murder, but as sacrilege, ripping apart the fabric of religion, family, and law. To them, it shook civilization's very foundations. The Roman family structure, known as the patria potestas, gave fathers absolute power over their households. A father could legally kill his own children, sell them into slavery, or disown them entirely. But when a child murdered their parent, that was cosmic rebellion, an act so unnatural that the gods themselves recoiled. The punishment, poena culae, literally penalty of the sack, existing by around 100 BCE, it's first mentioned in two legal codes, Lex Cornelia de Sicaris and later the Lex Pompeia de Parricides around 55 BCE, specifically prescribing this horrific execution for parricides. The earliest documented case involves Publicius Malleus around 100 BCE. Found guilty of matricide, he became the first known man to be sewn into a sack following sanction by a decree of the Roman people. His case set the precedent that would terrorize Romans for centuries. But here's what makes this even more chilling. Romans believed parricide was so unnatural that it literally poisoned the earth. The criminal couldn't be buried in Roman soil. They had to be removed entirely from the world of the living. The sack wasn't just execution, it was cosmic cleansing. Cicero references this punishment in his defense for Sextus Roscius in 80 BCE, noting that a leather bag was sometimes used to cover the criminal's head, symbolizing utter disgrace. He also reports that his brother Quintus, then governor in Smyrna, used poena culae against two local parricides, suggesting it was actively used throughout the provinces. The legal scholars of the time wrote extensively about parricide cases. Quintilian, the famous rhetorician, described how lawyers would struggle to defend accused parricides, knowing that even circumstantial evidence could lead to the sack. The mere accusation could destroy a person's reputation forever. The message was clear: murder your parent and Rome will erase you, physically, legally, spiritually. Here's how poena culae terrified even the bravest souls. The preparation ritual. First, the condemned was beaten, flogged until blood poured, traditionally with red rods called virgae sanguinae, perhaps symbolizing purification through pain. The flogging wasn't just punishment, it was the beginning of the spectacle. Romans gathered to watch as the criminal was stripped of their humanity, stroke by stroke. Then came the humiliation, shod in wooden clogs, a degrading symbol of shame that marked them as less than human. The wooden shoes were deliberately uncomfortable, making walking painful and awkward, a final indignity before the ultimate punishment. Then covered with a wolfskin hood, silencing and masking their identity. The wolfskin was significant. Wolves were seen as creatures outside civilization, wild and uncontrollable. By covering the parricide's head, Romans symbolically declared them no longer human. The sack itself. The culeus was a leather sack typically used for wine storage, approximately 525 liters, large enough to hold a person and several animals. Made from thick oxhide, it was waterproof and designed to sink quickly once thrown into water. The sack was sewn shut with heavy leather cord, creating an inescapable prison. The animals. Initially, only a snake was included, representing treachery and divine punishment. But as the punishment evolved, more animals were added. Snake, viper, betrayal and venom. Dog, loyalty turned violent. Rooster, dawn, twisted into death. Monkey, humanity devolved. Some accounts mention additional creatures, scorpions in desert regions, wild cats in forested areas, even rats in urban executions. Regional governors had some discretion in animal selection, but the symbolism remained consistent: creatures that would terrify and torment the dying criminal. The final journey. The condemned was transported on a cart drawn by black oxen, a grim procession through Rome's streets. Citizens lined the route, some jeering, others watching in horrified fascination. The cart moved slowly, allowing maximum public exposure of the criminal's shame. The procession would stop at key locations: the forum, temples, the family home, forcing the criminal to confront their crime's impact on Roman society. Sometimes criers would announce the criminal's deeds, ensuring everyone understood why this person deserved such an extreme fate. By the time of Emperor Hadrian, 117 to 138 CE, the four-animal version was standard, though the condemned could choose between the sack or facing wild beasts in the arena. Most chose the arena. At least there, death might come quickly. The punishment evolved significantly over Rome's long history. In Constantine, in 318 CE, it returned after a brief hiatus, but only with snakes, reflecting changing attitudes towards animal cruelty. Even Romans eventually found multiple animals excessive. Emperor Justinian in the 530 CE reinstated the full version for another 400 years in Byzantium, proving the punishment's enduring power to terrify. It finally disappeared around 900 CE, replaced by burning alive, which Romans actually considered more merciful. There's even a documented case in Tyre in 304 CE. Priest Ulpianus was scourged, placed in an oxhide sack with a dog and serpent, then cast into the sea. This case is particularly significant because it shows how the punishment was used against Christians during persecution.
The cruelty crossed millennia. Late medieval Saxony saw revival into the 1700s, with some records describing victims forced to drown for 6 hours while hearing Lutheran hymns, a twisted combination of Roman brutality and Christian morality. This wasn't just brutal. It was carefully designed psychological theater. Religious symbolism. Romans believed parricide polluted the soul so severely that normal burial rites couldn't cleanse it. Water burial meant no ritual burial, no peace for the spirit, banishing the victim to eternal unrest. The rushing water was meant to carry away the pollution, protecting Rome from divine wrath. The animals weren't chosen randomly. Each represented a specific moral failure. Dog, loyalty perverted into violence. Rooster, natural order disrupted. Dawn herald becoming death announcer. Snake, the ancient symbol of treachery and forbidden knowledge. Monkey, humanity degraded to its basest form. Political control. Public spectacles with carts of black oxen created processional shame. Citizens heard the condemned's final shrieks, saw the fur and feathers, watched the bubbling water, all horror designed to maintain social control. Even emperors faced this threat. When Nero's unpopularity peaked, protesters draped his statue in a sack with placards reading, "You deserve the sack." The threat was understood by all. Even emperors weren't above Roman law. Literary impact. Writers used puenaculae as the ultimate metaphor for justice. Seneca mentions snakes in the sack when discussing natural law. Juvenal ridiculed Nero. One sack is not enough for his crimes. The punishment became shorthand for cosmic justice when human law aligned with divine retribution. Rome wasn't alone in creative brutality, but puenaculae stood out for one crucial reason. It was official, public, and legally mandated. While many ancient tortures were secret, clandestine, or reserved for dungeons, Rome made this horror a spectacle. Greek siphonism. Victims were stripped naked, smeared with honey, then tied to posts where insects slowly consumed their flesh. Death took days, but it lacked the symbolic complexity of the Roman sack. Assyrian flaying. Traitors were skinned alive, their hides nailed to city walls as warnings. Brutal but purely punitive, no deeper meaning. Egyptian bronze bull. Priests burned inside hollow metal statues, their screams echoing through the bronze. Horrific, but focused only on causing pain. Chinese Iron Maiden. Impalement coffins lined with spikes. Effective execution, but lacking the theatrical elements Romans perfected. Persian scaphism. Victims were trapped between two boats, fed milk and honey until insects and disease consumed them. Similar to siphonism, but with added psychological torture. Most of these punishments happened in private, away from public eyes, tools of tyrants and secret police. Puenaculae was different. It was law, ritual, and public entertainment combined. Rome didn't hide its brutality, it celebrated it. Puenaculae was unique because it combined execution with religious ritual, political theater, and psychological warfare. It wasn't just about killing, it was about sending a message that would echo through generations. Could you survive even a single hour of this nightmare? Let's walk through what your final day would actually feel like, step by agonizing step. Hour 1. The sentencing. The verdict echoes through the courtroom. Puenaculae. Your legs give out. Guards drag you to a holding cell where you'll spend your last night alive. Sleep? Impossible. Every sound makes you jump. Is it time? Not yet, but soon. Hour 6. The preparation begins. Dawn breaks. They come for you. First the flogging. Red rods crack against your back, shoulders, legs. Each strike tears flesh. By the time they're done, you're covered in blood, your clothing shredded. The pain is so intense you can barely stand, but this is just the beginning. Hour 7. The humiliation. Wooden clogs are forced onto your feet, crude, painful, designed to make you stumble. Every step is agony on your beaten body. Then comes the wolfskin hood, pulled tight over your head. Suddenly you're blind. The world disappears. You can smell the wolf, wild, musky, alien. You're no longer human in their eyes. Hour 8. Into the sack. The culeus is brought out, massive, leather, reeking of wine and death. You're forced inside, your beaten body scraping against the rough interior. Then come the animals. You hear them before you feel them. The snakes hiss inches from your ear. The dog's low growl. The rooster's panicked clucking. The monkey's terrified chattering. The animals are as scared as you are. The snake strikes, not at you, but at the rooster. The dog snaps at everything. The monkey claws desperately at the leather walls. You're all trapped together in a nightmare of fur, feathers, scales, and terror. Hour 9. The sewing. Heavy leather cord threads through the sack's opening. Each stitch seals your fate. The space grows smaller, hotter, more suffocating. The animals panic more as the air runs out. Claws rake your skin. The snake coils around your leg. You try to scream, but the sound is muffled by leather and the hood. Hour 10. The final journey. The cart lurches forward. Every bump sends you crashing into the animals, them into you. The crowd's roars penetrate even the thick leather. They're enjoying this. You're no longer a person. You're entertainment. The dog bites your arm in its panic. The rooster's spurs tear your side. The monkey's claws find your face. And still, the snake hisses, coiled and ready. Hour 11. The water. The cart stops. You're lifted, sack animals and all. For a moment you're airborne, then the impact. Water crashes through the leather. It's cold, shocking, immediate. The sack begins to sink. Water fills your nose, your mouth. The animals go completely insane, scratching, biting, clawing at anything they can reach.
The final minutes. You can't tell if you're drowning or being mauled to death, maybe both. The snake's fangs find your neck. The dog's teeth sink into your shoulder. The water keeps rising. Your lungs burn. Everything is chaos, pain, terror, and darkness. And through it all, you know that somewhere above, Romans are watching, learning, remembering. Your death is their lesson. The psychological reality. Modern trauma specialists estimate that most victims would suffer complete psychological breakdown before even reaching the water. The combination of physical torture, sensory deprivation, animal attacks, and anticipation of drowning would shatter most minds within hours. Roman records describe condemned criminals begging for crucifixion instead, a death that could take days but at least offered the mercy of a quick end if the guards were feeling generous. No one begged for the sack twice. Some victims went catatonic during the preparation, their minds simply shutting down to protect them from the horror. Others became so hysterical that guards had to drug them with wine mixed with opium, not out of mercy, but because unconscious victims made for less entertaining spectacles. The animals suffered too. Many were already traumatized from capture and transport. Thrown into a leather prison with a terrified human, they attacked out of pure panic. Some sacks were found later with all the creatures dead from mutual wounds, a final tragedy in an already unspeakable horror. Poena Cullae disappeared from Roman law, but lived on in human memory. Medieval writers described it with fascination and horror. Renaissance scholars studied it as an example of ancient justice. Even today, it appears in historical fiction and horror stories. The punishment revealed something essential about Roman character, their belief that some crimes were so heinous they demanded cosmic response. This wasn't just law, it was theology, psychology, and theater combined into one terrifying spectacle. Modern legal scholars still debate whether such extreme punishment actually deterred crime. Evidence suggests it did. Parricide rates in Rome were remarkably low, whether from fear or from the strong family structures the punishment was designed to protect. Rome didn't just kill parricides, it erased them, from body to memory, from earth to afterlife. The sack wasn't execution, it was obliteration. Poena Cullae disappeared, resurfacing centuries later as twisted echoes in medieval Europe, but its essence remains a brutal reminder. When states wield fear as law, justice dies alongside the condemned. The punishment worked because it combined every human fear: drowning, animal attack, suffocation, public humiliation, spiritual damnation, into one inescapable nightmare. It was law as horror story, justice as cosmic theater. Next time you think modern justice is harsh, remember the sack. Remember that for 600 years, Romans watched their neighbors sewn alive with wild animals and thrown into rivers. Remember that people cheered. Some horrors are too perfect to die completely. They just wait in the shadows of history, reminding us what humans are capable of when righteousness meets rage. If this made your blood run cold, imagine living in that world. Savage history will show you more horrors that shaped civilization. Subscribe if you dare. Next, the flesh-eating priest of Abydos when Greeks cooked children alive. Until then, remember, power drenched in blood will drip through millennia.